Emily, Max, and Molly, I guess the version of this question I want to ask you is, let's talk about not academics or the poetry world so much as life, the way you or we, the way you would like to live it. Is that consonant with this concept of encountering a text where the meaning is unfixed, where it has to dawn on you over time? If you recommend that as a way of living, what would you say about that? I mean, some people would just say, oh, you know, I'd much rather have clarity. I'd much rather understand what the meaning that's being conveyed to me so I can put it to use in my life, rather than be driven crazy by the open-endedness of something and the ambiguity and unclarity. I sort of know where you come down because you're all devoted to this, to lives where things are not settled. That didn't quite come out right. But so, Emily, do you have something to say about life? Because after all, most ModPo people out there are not poetry experts and they're not academics. They're people who encounter poetry when they have a few minutes. Emily?
Yeah, well, I would assume that for most people, unless you're a very lucky or a very just determined person, that like meaning is not a given in your life. The way you feel about it changes, what you want from it changes, and even assigning something to meaning, like meaning to life, right? All the sort of sophomoric questions that we ask our children and still ask ourselves in more embarrassed ways when we get older, means that life has no more of a fixed and stable meaning than the poetry we read, which is why reading something like The Way feels like, you know, a poetic experience that mirrors the experience that you have as a person trying to understand what it means to be in the world.
It is a lot like living.
Exactly, yeah.
Yeah, encountering the way is a lot like the way we deal with the gray areas of our lives, yeah. Okay, good. Max, do you have a quick response to this issue? I know you think about this a lot.
Yeah, I love those last lines. Here's a small clearing come, here's the gasp of the small clearing come upon. Again, you know, just that experience that you get reading the poem of coming to that clearing where things start to make sense, but then it kind of closes back in on you just as quickly. And I think that in and of itself is a far more useful model, I think, for approaching things in one's life, just having that idea, or kind of having that experience modeled for you in a poem of coming upon a clearing and having it close back on you. Or having it sort of disappear behind you or something. It's a lot more, I don't know, if it's just that small, just that small sort of encounter experience seems more sustaining and useful in the long run than
useful in the long run.
Like a self-help book or something, you know?
Yeah, good, well put. Molly, do you want to add to this?
Sure. I think it's a choice to read a poem in a way that asks, what does this mean to me? Rather than what is this about, what is it supposed to mean? And that's the same way you can live your life, shifting your perspective so that you can choose for yourself what every little action, every little encounter can mean. What is the possibility? What are the different ways of looking at it rather than deciding what it's trying to tell you?
Choose for yourself what it means, which is obviously self-empowering and goes against the idea that there was a set thing that's supposed to be conveyed to you, which, by the way, is the assumption of most education. This counters the assumption of most education, which is that somebody has some material to convey to you and you're supposed to receive it and then do well on standardized testing, which conveys that you learned it, and there's nothing wrong with that, but that's a kind of education that could be supplemented by one where the interpreting self comes forward out of its receiving mode and begins to actively interact with the material it's being given, and then winds up, as Anna likes to say, doing the work, which is, by the way, not fun. It's actually quite fun, but doing the work of participating. I'm going to play Ray Armantrout reading the poem. That will close that little chapter, and then we'll go to Anna and someone on the phone, and we'll have Andrea and Jason respond to whatever the question is from the phone call. So here is Rae Armantrout performing The Way.
The Way. Card in pew pocket announces, I am here. I made only one statement because of a bad winter. Grease is the word, Greece is the way. I am feeling real-life emergencies or flubbing behind the scenes. As a child, I was abandoned in a story made of trees. Here's the small gasp of this clearing come upon again. The way.
How you say what you say is as important as what you say. The way that you take, the path, the going, is as important as what you get when you arrive. And when you arrive as a young reader in that memory, that beautiful memory, as far as I understand it, is a moment when you realize that your loving parent has taught you books and you've lost your way, Gretel-like, in a place where it's a world given to you by literature and you've lost it and you become a reader, and that's the portrait of the writer-artist as a young girl who's been liberated and also abandoned into a world made of trees, paper, books, pages. And there she is, and then she has this gasp of realization, and then the world of words closes in again. It's just, to me, very powerful and moving, and it's about process.